and with extraordinary sense of responsibility for how we guide it, what we do with it. This is the computational power of our planet. And over the last 40 plus years, from the 1980s to 2000, we were in a period of what I call deceptive growth, where the growth was slow. It was beginning to change us, but we didn't try feel it yet. And then we enter a period of disruptive growth, where it's exploding onto the world, and you saw part of the implications from what Jeff Dean was saying. And the implications of that explosive disruptive growth is that we're plummeting the cost of bandwidth, millions of times cheaper. Computational costs are dropping through the floor. The cost of memory is dropping through the floor, and global connectivity is exploding on this planet. Now, there are two implications I want to talk about during my presentation that are critically important. The first is that of abundance. And I had a chance to write a book called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. And here are the facts. The per capita income for every nation on this planet has increased 300%. Our lifespan over the last 100 years has increased 2.5 times. The cost of food has dropped 13-fold. Energy's dropped 30-fold. And then on top of that, what we're seeing is the following. Literacy on this planet over the last 100 years going 12% to 88% across the globe. The cost of transportation going 100 times cheaper, the cost of communications going 1,000 times cheaper, and the cost of knowledge and information, giving Google, billions of times cheaper for every single person. For a child in Mumbai, having access to knowledge and information as good as the President of the United States had 20 or 30 years ago. A child, the poorest child in Mumbai, in a smartphone, having access to the same knowledge and information that Larry Page has on Google. So besides creating this abundance and demonetizing the cost of living, what we're also seeing is we're about to see the transformation of the human race. When I say that, we're going to change over the next few decades how we raise our children, how we govern ourselves, how we communicate person to person, how we employ ourselves, commerce, entertainment, and we're about to become a multi-planetary species. And here's the most amazing thing. It's happening during our lifetime. It's happening during your lifetime. It's happening in the next 30 years. So don't blink. So what's driving all this? This is Gordon Moore, one of the co-founders of Intel. He and his partner started in 1958. And by 1965, Gordon had noticed something on the chips that they were producing at Intel, the integrated circuits. He noticed that the number of transistors per piece of silicon per dollar was roughly doubling every 12 to 18 months. And in 1965, he publishes this paper and he goes, you know, this is likely to continue. And it's been known as Moore's Law. And it's continued for 50 years. And I want to show you what that looks like. That's the first integrated circuit, 1958. Here we see two transistors, about a half-inch feature length on each. Let's fast forward to the first commercial product in 1971, the Intel 4004, 2,300 transistors, about $1 each. Now, let's fast forward 45 years to Intel's i7 processor. Here we see a processor that is 330 billion times faster. When you want to understand why the world is getting faster, why we're able to do the things that we do, it's right here. It's that transformation, 330 billion times faster over the course of 45 years. But let me give you another visualization of what this looks like, right? In 1956, this was a hard drive. 5 megabytes, $120,000, and if you happen to have your cargo airplane, you could move it from office to office. Now, we probably noticed when this happened. 2005, here's 128 megabytes for 99 bucks. Pretty extraordinary transformation. But did we notice this? When over the course of 9 years, it went to 128 gigabytes, right on schedule, on Moore's Law, for 99 bucks, 1,000 times better. I'm an investor and an advisor in a nanotechnology company that's focused on doing this 1 billion times better again. Right? We're talking about all of Google's data centers in a sugar cube. And if you look at this is from my partner, Ray Kurzweil. He's a co-founder with myself at Singularity University. This is the computational growth plotted on a log scale over the last 110 years. What we see here on this curve in 5 paradigms, the last of which is Moore's law. What Ray calls this is the law of accelerating returns, that we're using faster computers to build faster computers to build faster computers, and it's not slowing down. We don't see World War I or World War II. We don't see boom times or recessions, right? And so if it's likely to continue, what you get is something pretty interesting. See, in 2023, 7 years from now, the average computer we go and buy from Best Buy, if they're still around, is now calculating at 10 to the 16th cycles per second, which a neurophysiologist will tell you that's the rate at which your brain does calculations. So what happens when you can buy a human brain for $1,000? Well, it doesn't slow down, right? 25 years later, now $1,000 buys the computational power of the entire human race. Now your kid's homework gets really easy. And what the insight I want to share with you is that these faster, cheaper computers that are going on and on and on are sort of the foundational, growth medium upon which all these other technologies are growing. So as computers are getting thousands and billions of times faster, so are these other technologies. And these technologies, computers, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, AR, VR, synthetic biology, are literally recombining and giving us unexpected convergent consequences. You can be an expert in one area, but actually understanding where these come together and what they do, the new business models, are transforming our planet right here, right now.
All right, so that was there to provoke us to think a little bit about what does the future hold. I think we need to understand we're in a space where the future is not linear. Right? We're not going to make 5% improvements every year going forward. In our space, in your space, there are going to be certain things which are going to be extremely disruptive. We're going to see huge change. Some of the numbers that I always remember from this presentation, 330 billion times faster in the 45 years since the first microchip was made. I mean, that's on a level that we can hardly comprehend. And it's just going to continue going faster and faster. And it is reaching the point, as you see, with the computing capacities now at the level that a human brain can be, competed against by a computer. And we already know these chess programs and so forth that are beating humans nowadays. And it's just going to continue until, 20 years time, 30 years time, there's going to be computing power that would be able to equal the entire human race. And it's going to continue going. There's elements of that which is maybe scary, but it's inevitable, and we as leaders in an industry need to come to grips with one of the questions, which is, what does this computing power mean for our industry? Right? We're living in an industry which has got elements of it which still look like they did 40 years ago. We still get telephonic trade references, we still get bank codes, and although those are still of some use, we need to understand that that's not going to be the way things will be done in the future, and we need to make sure that we, as individuals and as businesses and as an industry, are ready for what's coming and make the change. We need to be the ones that go out there and actually bring the change instead of it being somebody out there who's going to disrupt us. That's, I would say, equally the case for Anoxico and for any credit executive out there. Is, what you don't want is there to be a disruption in our industry that maybe comes through from accountants, who knows, who decide that this is a new way of doing credit, and they come up with great models and AI and are able to do a whole lot better than we can. So we feel to some degree that Anoxico is we're on the same team as all of you. We feel we face the same challenge, the same problem. We can't go out on our own and solve these problems if nobody in the industry is working on them with us. We need to be serving you, and we as an industry need to be solving these problems more or less together, because otherwise we're all going to get left behind. Right? We can't continue in the same old way, but only one of us on our own. So one credit executive decided he's going to start implementing AI in his assessments. What are the credit insurers going to say? What information are you going to use? How are you going to defend that to your customers? So you on your own will find it very difficult to do that. And we believe as an Oxyco that there's going to be tremendous power in us coming together for us to have some kind of discussion forum, training forum, whatever it is, whatever is necessary for our industry to come together. We feel that there's going to be tremendous value if at least what we can do is meet regularly and discuss the overall problems that we have. But when I say problems, I'm really thinking about the strategic industry level challenges we have. There are already associations which meet to discuss particular problem buyers and particular bad debt problems. But where can we come together to discuss how computing power is going to change our industry? How are we going to discuss new regulations? How does POPI affect all of us, for example? I mean, there's some very basic things that we could discuss that at the moment, from where I'm sitting, I don't see where this is happening. And I feel that it's a threat to our industry and a threat to our business that we do not face these challenges and we do not have some way where we can talk about it. There is a selfish motive for an Oxyco, which is if all of you do well and you use products that we are able to create, of course, it will be good for us too. But we really want Credexa to be something that is owned by the industry. Like we want you as executives, as the people who really lead this industry, to lead us as well and to lead each other in a way that is enabling for everybody, right? And if all of us do well, then that's great. And we see this as a little bit out of our contribution to the industry, is that we can be generous by focusing on a small group of people, our credit executives who are involved in trade credit, who we feel we can do a lot of the work to support whatever this body would need. Okay, so that's where we're coming from as an Oxyco. We're saying we see a need for something in the industry, but we're willing to say, well, the industry can choose and decide what it would ideally like. And this is where we want to get to a point now. The discussion today is mainly about what are the things that credit executives need that we could potentially help to arrange. If it's, for example, a type of training, right? That we could get a speaker, or we could get some course, we could get some material, and we could get an opportunity for us all to discuss it together. We are very happy to arrange that, to make it happen, but it needs to be driven by the community. The community needs to decide what it is that's necessary. It should not be driven from our own perspective or from the perspective of one particular individual. We think that there is the opportunity here to create some kind of association that takes the input from this group and others of credit executives who can curate to some degree their own individual learning path, right? What is it that the credit executives want to learn? What is it that their businesses require? And then put that together into some form of discussion forum, training, whatever. We're at the point which we don't want to limit it, and we don't want you to limit your thinking as well. So what we'd like to do in this next step is just, we're going to show a little bit of the rest of the video, but I would love you guys to just put, if you can, into the chat. So open up the chat in the Teams call, and if you can just put there what it is that you think your top personal need is as a credit executive. So what is it that you need as an individual? Forget for the time being what your business needs. Maybe your need is not to understand AI and all of that. Maybe your need is around, you need better management training. You need better understanding of financial models, or you want to shift from being just a credit executive to a general manager in the business, and that's the path that you see. And nobody's giving you currently that kind of training. You know, maybe you would want to have some of the elements of an MBA taught to you or presented to you or given to you in some form. So I want you to think firstly about your personal needs as a credit executive. And secondly, what do you think your business will need that could also benefit from some kind of association? So that's, I think, the more obvious things. You know, what better tools could there be, or technologies, or sharing of certain insights and learnings across the industry that could benefit your particular business. But don't forget, I think our passion actually as an Oxford is more about you as individuals. I think that there's far too little available for credit executives to help them with their career, with their knowledge, and with their ability to influence the market that we're in. And if I can just say a final word, I mean, I've become very passionate about trade credit. I really think it is a very powerful tool for economic growth that is, you know, in the hands of individuals like yourselves. You every day make the decision whether to, you know, put a company into liquidation, or, you know, determine a business rescue outcome, or in other cases to give more credit to growing businesses. Right? You hold the reins to some degree on the growth ability of businesses in South Africa. It's a very big responsibility that you hold, and there's a huge amount of impact that you create, and that we shouldn't, you know, for that reason, credit executives should get more attention, should get more support, and should have a hell of a lot more tools available to them to make that impact the best possible way within their businesses. It's not something that should be in the back office. It really should be front and center in the strategy of businesses in South Africa and globally. And if you see yourself in that way, think then about, okay, well, what are the tools that I need as an individual? What is the training I need as an individual? What is the help, what could an association bring that would be of value to me, that I would then be willing to be involved with, and I'd be willing to commit some time to and participate.
Mustn't box themselves in. They must go wild. Let the little child in them come out. And,
correct.
And even if you think it's not possible, that impossible thing that you think about, and people have said in the past, it can never be done. That people couldn't walk on the moon a couple of years ago. They're going to live there now. Think about it. Write it down and say, oh no, they're going to laugh at me. We won't. We want to know what those wildest expectations are.
Brilliant. So while we're showing the next part of that same video, please, if all of you, if this is something that you think is of value, what is it that you want? What do you want as an individual, and what do you think your business would need? Okay. So while we're playing the next, it's about another 8 minutes of the video, 6 minutes, that you can put those into the chat, and we will then, after this, talk through them a little bit, understand what it is that you would like. We can debate it a little bit, and then we will close off the session with a couple more questions. Okay. There's no audio. Sorry, hang on. Apologies for that. We're going to get the audio back.
Our planet, right here, right now. So
okay,
first,
audio should be on.
Networks.
Thank you for letting us know.
Right, this is the world's population growth over the last 15 years. We've just crossed the 7 billion mark. But if you look at internet penetration, in 2010, we had 1.8 billion people connected on planet Earth to the internet. Today, it's about 2.9. By 2022 to 25, let's call it 8 years from now, we're at a low estimate going to have 5 billion people connected, which means we're adding 3 billion new minds onto the global economy that have never been accounted for before. But that's the low estimate. Why? Because this guy at Facebook, with drones and satellites, wants to connect every single person on the planet. My friends at Google, with Google Loons and satellites and drones, want to connect every single person on the planet. Paul Jacobs, Richard Branson, Greg Weiler have just raised $1 billion to deploy OneWeb, a 648 satellite constellation, in the next 6 years to connect every single person on the planet. And last week, Elon was announcing with SpaceX a 4,000 satellite constellation to connect every single person on the planet. So I want you to imagine in the next 6 to 8 years, not 5 billion, but 8 billion connected people. Not coming online like you and I did, right, on AOL at 9600 baud, right? Coming online with a megabit connection or better, with access to the world's information. We are about to see a massive explosion in innovation like we have not seen yet. Innovation coming from parts of the world that we would have never thought of. 5 billion new thinkers, 5 billion new innovators, 5 billion new creators, problem solvers, entrepreneurs coming online within this next decade. And it's not just people, it's things, right? Last year, we had 15 billion connected devices. By 2020, my friends at Cisco talk about the Internet of Things. The low estimate is 50 billion connected devices. And by the way, each one of these devices have a dozen sensors on them. We're talking about heading towards a world of 1 trillion sensors, where everything is being seen and measured and known. Fast forward 10 years later, now we've got 500 billion connected devices, 100 trillion sensors, sensors everywhere, in micro drones, on the fabrics, inside your body, right? Letting us know anything we want, anytime we want, anywhere we want. And oh, those sensors on your body and in your body. We're about to see an explosion in how we think and we connect, we communicate. This is Google's contact lens that's picking up glucose in your tears, which correlates to glucose in your blood. But that's the first step of sort of connecting to your neural system. There are amazing companies right now, like Kernel, a friend of mine, Brian Johnson, one of our benefactors at the X Prize Foundation, one of my investors, has launched $100 million to be able to connect your brain to the cloud. Right? My friend Ray Kurzweil, your brain is a collection of 100 billion neurons with 100 trillion synaptic connections that make you, you, and me. Now, the last time we had an upgrade of the human brain was 2 million years ago, when we said our large prefrontal cortex sort of exploded and gave us language and art and the ability to think and think in similes in all of these different areas. But as we start to connect the brain to the cloud, we're about to see, for the first time ever, an explosion in human intelligence. Brian talks about, it's not AI versus humans, it's HI. It's the most important asset we can ever have. It's the increase of human intelligence. I love this copy of Time magazine, plugging in the brain into the cloud. But that 2045 is not a right estimate. From the companies I'm seeing, Ray's estimate is by the early to mid 2030s. So imagine when you need additional memory capacity or 1,000 times more intelligence, you can sort of like spool it up like your phone does on the cloud today. But by the way, the early 2030s, oh my God, that's 20 years from now. So what's the world going to be looking like? We heard about AI, whatever version you want, from HAL to Siri to Google Now to IBM Watson. I prefer Jarvis. I think we're all going to have a version of Jarvis. We'll be talking, you'll be listening. You'll give permission to your Jarvis, your personal software shell, to read your emails, watch what you're eating, listen to your blood chemistries, sort of listen to your conversations, because it's giving you all the information you need just in time. And these AIs are also helping us solve the world's grandest challenges. On the Google stage last year, I was with the head of the Watson team from IBM on an X Prize that Amir, one of the co-organizers here, runs, and we're challenging teams to work with AIs to solve the world's biggest problems. We get frightened about grand challenges because we see them from far away, but guess what? The tools and technologies we have to solve these grand challenges is exploding onto the scene. That gives me the greatest hope for the future. AI is our most important tool ever to solve our grand challenges. And besides all of these technologies, we're now beginning to understand the software code of the human species, right? Look at this curve. That white line is Moore's law. It's the increasing power, the reducing costs.
All right, so far we've only had one thing proposed. I do think we would want definitely more input from everybody that's out there. I think somebody's just put in a long portion. Thank you, Walter, for your input. Let's give you guys just another 2 minutes, if you don't mind. Just please brainstorm, but it can be simple things, can be complex things. What is it that you would like to have, right? What is it that we could prepare for you, right? It might cost a bit of money. It might cost some membership fees, maybe not. But so don't limit yourself. But just, I think if we come out of the session and there's no real needs, then we don't need to proceed. Right? There's nobody who's going to force this thing. We do want to make sure that we are discussing things that are important to credit executives, and that there is a real need for something out there where we can come together and have these discussions that will help us all solve problems more in depth in our industry. So let me give you another 2 minutes. I'm going to read Walter's message again. All right, thank you. I still see some contributions coming in, so keep those coming.
While we're waiting, can I discuss this first little question that came up?
Sure.
Someone posted the question and says, do we regard credit management as a critical role? 30 years ago, I'm old. One of my colleagues says I'm very old. He says I've been in credit for 100 years, and I haven't, but almost. Now, if you move your head back quite a few years, and you think when margins were this big, and you could give terms this long, and collections was just one of those things that happened there in the background. Now, talking about margins like this, we need cash flow, and we need focus. So the role of a credit manager and his team has become so critical in a business that it's overtaken most of the other activities in the business. Because if you do not collect, if you do not manage it carefully, there is going to be no cash to run your business with. So the role of a credit manager is, first of all, to be very sharp, very connected, and very close to his business in all facets. Sales, marketing, finance, every part of the business. The days that a credit manager's role was purely to collect debt is gone long ago. You are playing one of the most critical roles there is in a business. You are managing the most important part of the body, the blood. That's what you do. So that's how critical credit control or credit management is.
So I think there's some great ones coming through. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Leroy. Thank you, Cheryl. I would like to give maybe one or two people just the opportunity to speak. Give your reflection on what we're saying. Maybe one of those who have submitted something in the chat, just to maybe talk through that. But give your, just give a honest feedback. Like if you are going to want to participate, what is it that you would like to see happen? And what are maybe some of the concerns that you have, if there anything? Let's avoid doing A, B, and C, and let's please focus on D, E, and F. Anybody who would like to share, so unmute yourself and share with the group. Maybe public speaking needs to be the first training we do.
No, you must.
Hello, it's Walter.
Morning, Dom.
Oh.
Sorry, okay, got this. I'll come in a second.
Morning, Musa. So maybe Walter first, and then Musa, if you can join in after, please. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, guys. It's Walter from Growth Point Properties. I think what you guys are trying to start here is actually a very important requirement, especially with regards to the sharing of information and ideas and experiences and that kind of thing, especially with legislation like business rescue, etc., etc. From the Growth Point perspective, because we deal with various amounts of industries, I'm sure you guys read my comment there with regard to some sort of industry analysis that is becoming more and more critical. I think it's a great idea that if we can get guys together that are in various different industries to share kind of ideas and the way we handle things. Importantly, one of the credit managers on this call will probably be very much involved in a specific industry that, of course, has got an effect on another industry. So if you look at steel, the construction gets affected as it goes all the way down to developments and that kind of thing. So I'm all for it, and I'm of the opinion that we should, if it's possible, have a monthly or a quarterly meeting where these kind of ideas and things get bounced off. And of course, there's also the ability of being able to risk share, where we've got common customers and that kind of thing. So I think it's a great idea. Thanks.
Thanks, Walter. Musa, you wanted to share?
Yeah, Dom, morning, Martin. Guys, first comment on the point that Martin made, with regards to what role credit management plays in the organization. And I mean, you and I have been together with this thing for a long time. And, it's fundamentally the cornerstone of the business. If your credit management is wrong, so many other things are wrong. Just from an operational perspective, you use a simple example. A guy who has a credit facility, comes to your desk to come and buy something. And, the facility is not loaded or is incorrect or whatever. He walks away, he goes to your competitor. Simple as that. It's not even the collections part that you're talking about. It's even just, the starting point. We've got to recognize and we've got to stand up as a body to make sure that we count it as important components of the business. That's the first part I wanted to make. The second part I wanted to make, I believe that this forum is actually what we needed. But the one suggestion is that we need to cut it across different businesses and even different bureaus as well, because if you're going to keep it to a particular bureau, you're only going to get your set of clients that are going to be contributing. So we need to cut it across the bureaus. That's the first thing. Then there are things like, for example, legislation that we need to work towards. Sub-C needs to be upgraded. This body can drive the change for Sub-C because that data is crucial. for us to get to an automation point, we need to have that platform that will give us the info that we require. So, and I mean, if you take SMMEs, where the future drive of this country is, how do we get these SMMEs on board by making sure that they share information correctly? So making sure that they update their records and statistics regularly. They together, the financial statements are loaded on time, and then also try and get legislation passed that these financial statements become available to the bureaus, so that in the same space that we've got the consumer, the world working on. I mean, Martin, you'll remember this. If you had to go and open an Edgar's account, in the 80s, you waited a week or 2 weeks before they came back with an answer. Today you can go to, Truworths and open an account in 30 seconds, giving them a copy of your ID. Now, those engines that they've created for the consumer world, we need them for the commercial space, and that's what we require. And if we don't get, we don't start the process, we're never going to get there. And I'm hoping that in my lifetime, before I retire as a credit manager, I can see an automated system. Today you walk to an ATM and you're drawing cash and it asks you, do you want a loan? And it gives you a loan, on the ATM. That's powerful. If you think of it in the old days, it just, if you told someone that 10 or 15 years ago that you could get a loan in an ATM, he'd laugh at you. So if you look at today, the SMMEs want money. They need, one of the biggest downfalls of SMMEs is funding. And so those that want to play in the space and want to be counted as serious will comply. Those that don't want to and are trying to make a quick buck or trying to score loans that they're not entitled to, they'll fall away. But that percentage of people that we want in our system, we need to get legislation sorted out that will allow us to get access to their data, financial statements, history around CVs of the managers, because you find many people that are very, very talented, have got that ability. How do we bring a guy's CV into credit score of an SMME? You need to do it because he's got some management capability that's unique to his business, and we need to give him some form of concession to be able to get some funding that will allow him. And so from my perspective, I think legislation is important. Then information sharing becomes also crucial. CPSA today, has a wealth of knowledge around consumers. We don't have the same knowledge around businesses, and we need to create. So I think we've got a model to work with in terms of consumer, and we might not be able to replicate everything, but I think certainly some of the things we can start doing to be able to make sure that our credit industry becomes something meaningful and something that can allow people to find finance, because that's what they want ultimately. I think that's my little bit that I want to share.
Very powerful. Thank you, Musa.
For instance, the informal market. There is such a huge market out there. Recently, when I was helping Distill, I found out that they've got a huge client base. Your informal businesses that are in the informal settlements, that they're supplying alcohol to. On terms, on account. And if you do not know who you're supplying to, how are you going to understand your risk? And that is critical, and that's one of the questions here. And where do you get that information from? How do you obtain that information? How fast can you get that information? Because that person has only got one access, maybe. He doesn't have a laptop, but he has this thing.
Consumer.
Cell phone.
Are there anybody else who would like to present something? I'm also just aware, please don't only think about, I know information and making decisions is important, but I do see that as a business need. But what do you as an individual need? Have you thought about, and I'm talking here purely as an outsider, I look at things like finance and people who, let's say, going to go the CA route and become a CFO. It's a very clear path. There's lots of things you can do and study. It's very well sorted out. But what is there for credit executives? I know there's the NQF, but beyond that, I think it tends to dry up. I think that from my perspective, it looks to me like you are on your own. Beyond a certain point, there's no more help for you. and you kind of reach perhaps the limitations of your career, because nobody in the business knows what to teach you or how to further your career. And I think that I personally have a passion for credit executives being able to have lifelong learning and be able to continue their learning. So I'm just jogging that side of the brain for you not to forget that I think something like Credexa should also be somewhat delinked from your real business needs, right? Which are things, of course, like we want to make better decisions and be able to extend credit better. So anybody else got something they want to? I see Praneel has a question. Have you got a hand up, or is it?
Hey Dominic, how are you doing?
Good news out.
Okay.
Thanks for joining.
So I just want to get the gist of this conversation. So the purpose is actually to get together a brains trust, in essence, of credit executives to push the industry forward. Roundtable discussions, innovation, and spur that entire industry or that entire sector forward. And if that is the gist of this conversation, then I'm all for it, because even by the TED talk as well, and prior to that, I think the discussion that we've had, I think it's needed, because as you said, the world is moving so fast, and technology and innovation is running at speeds that's incomprehensible 10 years ago. So I think it would be valuable to actually set up an association of brains trust that can actually contribute towards pushing the industry forward or pushing the sector forward. And it's just a comment from my side. I think it will be very valuable for the collective, but it needs to be managed and run in accordance that it's independent, yeah, I think that's about it, eh?
Very much so. We see it as exactly that. The reason that we may have started it is because we've seen the need for it. But we as Inoxico don't want to run this organization at all. Credexa, we want to create as an organization, or put a team together of people, and you, as the people that are the credit executives, you're going to own it. You're going to drive it. And questions like this one, are we going to focus on business or consumer risk, is going to be answered by the people that participate. It's going to be your decision as to what it is that you want to look at. It's going to be your decision as to what you want to drive. It's going to be your decision as to who you want to allow to participate. Musa just now said we mustn't just allow one bureau to, but we're not participating as a bureau. We're participating as a person with a concern or seeing a missing link in the credit fraternity. And that missing link was people with your capability, with your knowledge, and with your responsibility, not talking to one another and not sitting around a table and discussing ideas and coming together and saying, sure, we are missing something. What is it that we're missing, and how can we get that, or who can we get that to help us develop that?
Yeah, Martin, as I said, if that's the purpose for this forum, to get to that decision, then I fully support it, because I think it is needed, and I think that without it, I'm not going to say we're gonna go backwards, but it'll definitely help us push forward.
Yeah, we'll be in the background to administrate the thing for you and make sure that everything runs smoothly. But in the end of the day, the decisions on how regular, how often you need to meet, what's going to be discussed, who's going to be the speakers, what topics are they going to be driven, is going to be up to the members of this association to make those critical decisions.
Yeah, and it'll also, my apologies, it'll also include having discussions, forums, talks by industry executives, industry leaders, to spur the change.
Correct.
Happy. Thank you.
Leroy has a question, apparently. Do you want to ask it, Leroy?
Hi, thanks, Dominic. It's Leroy here from Clover. I'm just standing in for Cara, that's currently in a meeting as well. So mine is focused on. So the one question that I have is a personal one in terms of, does something like an MBA exist for where you specialize specifically in credit management? That's just a question. I haven't found anything like that where some of the MBA programs is very focused on either leadership or very focused on pure finance. or corporates, and not so much on credit management specifically.
100%. I mean, that's hitting the nail on the head. I personally haven't seen anything. We can't find anything, and then it tends to end at credit managers. Like you can get decent training up to be a credit manager, but how do you learn to be a credit executive, and how do you go beyond that? I'm not aware of anything.
Professor Andy Andrews designed a arm in the UNISA world where they go to a business, and then in the business they create like an MBA program. But each individual in the program then, when he does his, what's the name? He writes it around his speciality or what he's best in. And then that is either applied in the business or not applied in the business to improve the business. But there's no MBA which is purely designed around managing credit or the risk profile of the business.
Or any strategic level course.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, the green credit has only really started taking off in the last 20 years. Before that, it didn't exist. It was just purely you can collect debt or you can't collect debt. Then they started formulating it, and therefore you have all these various colleges, and you've got programs that you can follow, and you had the BTEC credit that was done by the one Technicon. Then it was taken over by UNISA. UNISA then started to change it into a BCom credit degree. How far they got with that, only they know, because I don't know about many people that has actually studied that. And therefore there is this huge gap in developing people. And how do you fill that gap, or with what do you fill that gap? And if someone has found something that can accelerate that training or development, then that's what this program is for.
Yeah. And I agree fully. I think in the last 5 to 10 years, I think credit management has become so much more than, and Carl and I have spoken about this yesterday as well. It's become so much more than collecting money. It's on so many levels. You have to manage the customer relationships. You have to manage the relationship with other departments within your organization. So I certainly think, if not an MBA or postgraduate qualification for credit management, I certainly think there's a merit to have to remove that from the finance umbrella and then move that to a more specialized BCom credit management. That speaks to my personal question. So from a business perspective, some of the struggles that we have here in the Eastern Cape specifically is, and I've posted the question, and Martin, you've now obviously touched on that on this forum already, that kind of the customers of our customers that sits in Umtata, on that side of the Eastern Cape, they don't have internet all the time, and they don't. So we obviously very, assertive in terms of providing them on terms. That is obviously a different route that the Stella has taken. But do it on a cash, selling stock to them on a cash basis. But the risk of that, of course, is that the cash is given to the driver drives all the way back to Port Elizabeth, and then he gets hijacked because they're fully aware. And that's a big business risk for us at the moment, because how do you work around something like that where the informal sector is a very big sector that is not properly being tapped into because of lack of information, or there's just the risk levels is just too high for you to take the chance, and you try to build that risk component into your prices, but that completely falls to the cracks if the money gets stolen from the driver. So that's a challenge that between the credit department and the distribution logistics, trying to wrap our heads around how do we find a middle ground in terms of securing the sale and eventually having the money paid into our bank accounts. And the customer being happy, and the customers are, at the same time being happy with the product that they've received. It's been delivered to them on time, it's a product of good quality, and everyone is happy. I feel every single time, a sale goes through, 2 of the 3 parties involved in that whole transaction is somehow unhappy or left scratching their heads of how do you account for the loss, or how do you account for that hole that has been created now.
Very powerful. Thank you, Leroy. It's very powerful. I'm just a bit aware of time. We do want to ask you guys a couple of questions, and please bear with us. We're going to try and use a tool called Slido, which is going to ask you basically this list of questions so that each person can, if you relatively anonymously, ask these questions. So if you can not click on this, but use your phone, right? Use the camera on your phone. So you turn on your camera, hover over your screen. It should pick up that scan. It's going to ask you to go to that particular place on Slido. So if you're having trouble with that, let us know. But it's going to ask you a number of questions, just basically to know, should we proceed? Meaning, would you participate? How often would you like to meet? Right? Is this something you want to do monthly, quarterly? Do you want to do it only once a year? Should it be one big conference? Then the next question was around, do you think that membership fees would be feasible? So do you think your companies would pay for something? Because it would obviously influence potentially some of the things that we could do. And then the last thing is just in terms of venue. Right now, of course, it doesn't matter. We're doing it online. But I think at some point it would be good to have some of these meetings in person. And then one question we have is in terms of venue. In Oxford can do it every now and then. But really, we also don't want to impose ourselves. We really want this to be credit executives deciding.
I only see one question, Dominique, so I need to understand a little bit more. You know, I come from stoneage.com, so how do I scroll to the next question?
It's a good question.
Who would participate in Credexa? Would you participate is the one question, and that is now being answered by some of the people. How do I go to the next question?
Is it next? Okay. All right, it's not giving us the next one, unfortunately. So if you can answer that first one, that'd be great. All of you managed to do that. I can see that there's so far, 5 people. One person says it's not for me. That's fine. 80% have said yes. That's great. If the rest of you can just, get to that, that'd be helpful. And then we're going to have to do the other questions in the chat. So if you've already answered that first one, you've managed to do that, please could you answer the second question, which is how often would you like to meet? We're giving you the option, monthly, quarterly, biannually, or...
And critically about the meeting, do they want to start doing it face-to-face?
Okay, well, I think that can be the next one. But let's just say,
okay.
How often should we meet? Once you've decided if you want to join or not, how often should these be run? Because that does, influence quite dramatically obviously the frequency with which we will need to arrange things. If it's monthly, it can't be a 6-hour session every month. If it's quarterly, maybe we have something a bit longer. Maybe it's a breakfast and a talk and a discussion. So let's just give people a sense of how often do they think they've got time to participate. This is something that you don't just receive, you're going to be giving, right? You may have to present once a year your particular ideas and give your particular input. So if you can answer those questions. Okay, I understand, Leroy, you're standing in for Carla, so we can get those answers from Carla. Then the second question was how often? Let's go back one. How often would you like to meet? Musa is saying quarterly. Anybody else? You'd like to let us know how often you think you can meet? Just put it into the chat.
No, false. Done.
Okay.
See my response.
Okay, so Rodney, thank you. You're going to be off to the next meeting. I know we are a bit out of time. Just let us know how often you would like to meet. I think that's the next most important thing. Walter, also quarterly. Quarterly looks like it's going to be at the moment. Cheryl would like to have once a month. That's great. Love to see people more often. If you want to stay behind after the 10 o'clock thing, we'll still be here. So we'll just open up the floor again for more discussion. If there are particular things you'd like to just tell us, ask us, we're going to stay online for at least another 15 minutes. If you have any final thoughts as well, you can put it into the chat. We will pick that up. I think from our perspective, it looks like people are generally interested. We should continue with something like this. The next step would be to I would say launch Credexa, have the first session, we'll talk about some topic, but we're still going to leave it pretty much open for people to add what would they like for this organization, this association going forward.
And maybe at that stage, once we've made the decision, is they can elect a leadership so that that person can
Correct.
chair and run the meetings in a
That's
proper,
good. I think we will
organized fashion.
elect leadership as well. And final thing is, if you guys think of who else you would want to participate, if you are connected to other credit executives, then please start to socialize the idea with others that you know, because there will be the opportunity to invite people. But of course, I think that we will discuss a mechanism for how best to
It's
manage
critical that we allow people that thinks and it has got a strategic role.
Correct.
So the role is as an executive being strategic, making strategic decisions, strategic planning, and that means like right from budgeting right through to the other side. Every decision in a credit fraternity is made by that person.
People who are going to get value and are going to contribute. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Right, thank you so much for everyone. I know the time's over. We're going to hang out. Appreciate your participation. Appreciate the energy. Appreciate the ideas and the thoughts. We're very happy that it does seem that in general people are happy, but people will vote with their feet as well. So if you are interested, you're going to need to participate, and we're going to need people to contribute. This isn't going to be something an Oxico is going to run. We are going to support it. It's for you. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Martin.
you. Walter, give me a call.
Cool. So those who want to stay behind, you're welcome to talk openly, but we're going to stick around. Got training to do. You've got training to do. Oh, then you have to head on.
I gotta go.
Okay. I've got plenty of time.
I'm gonna go. I've got staff to train, so.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Thank you, Fatima, for all the help.
You're welcome.
But I think key thing has been, from my perspective, the general idea of having the brain stress, as Praneel was saying, this is definitely something people would like. So Leroy's going off, Cheryl's off. Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks, Praneel. I see we still have Peter on the line, and who's JN? I think that's
Gillian now.
Oh, Gillian. Okay.
And Wendy is still there.
Oh. Gillian, are you still with us? And Wendy? They're here with us in spirit. Okay. Then if there's no more questions, thank you so much, guys. We appreciate your time, and we'll sign off there. Cheers. Have a good day. Bye-bye.